All right. Welcome to the newest episode of Whatever Happened to the Game. I am Adrian Tepes, and
And I'm Albeleo.
great. So we're going to get started. We have these recommended games for you today. These games should be available on GOG.com, Steam, or on the console online stores. So, for instance, we have one that should be available on Switch, and another one that should have a version available on just pretty much every major console store. So, without too much further ado, we're also going to say we recommend StreamYard. This is how we've been doing these live stream chats so far. There's a lot you can do just for a basic membership getting started. And there's the link to StreamYard in the description. So, should be good. And this is our recent content. So, Albeleo, how's the live streams on Fallout going for you?
Going pretty good, making a bit more progress. I'm not entirely stuck for whole episodes inside of one city.
Well, yeah, it happens. There's a lot. The old Fallout games involve a lot of dialogue. In case you haven't noticed yet,
Yeah,
a lot of
definitely.
talking around to people, and which kind of leads into what I had recently. So I finally made the episode or video that I said I would on why Diablo isn't really a role-playing game. I'm not even saying this out of dislike for Diablo because I do like similar games to Diablo, such as Castlevania: Curse of Darkness or Lament of Innocence. But I'm just went over the thought of, okay, what makes an RPG and why Diablo doesn't really fulfill those qualities to the extent that, say, Fallout or Star Control does. Which, yeah, that's only one of our games that I'm going to be recommending. But first, we're going to proceed with what Albeleo recommended, which should be pretty interesting. So it's up to you, Albeleo, for Demon's Crest.
So, Demon's Crest is one of those games that a lot of people just don't really remember all that much from the Super Nintendo era because it was overshadowed by a lot of them, like Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, and though to a lesser extent, even Super Metroid, which wasn't all that popular apparently. Demon's
And
Crest.
I also see it's 1994, which is part of the later edge of Super NES before they started
Yeah,
going into N64 and Sony PlayStation and
yeah,
Sega
it
Saturn.
was definitely on the tail end of things. But it's one of those like really well detailed games. You've got you've got wall clinging instead of just wall jumping, like what Samus would do in Super Metroid. Uh, Firebrand here will actually just latch onto walls, and he can even just straight up fly. Not there's different forms that you can get because this is the third game in the Gargoyles Quest series.
Right. And I saw in the information about it that it was a spin-off of Ghosts and Goblins.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, shared universe because it's so Ghosts and Goblins follows Arthur or whatever his name is, and
Right.
then Demon's Crest takes place in the demon realm, and you play Firebrand. And if you know Ghosts and Goblins, he's one of the Red Aramar, which is those really annoying demons from that series. Well, he's basically top dog, and in Demon's Crest, there's this like grand set of crests that all have different powers, fire, air, time, heaven, and
Right.
all the demons basically just wipe each other out trying to obtain these crests. And so you're not playing a game from the perspective of even an anti-hero. You're trying to get revenge basically on the demon king, I want to say, Phalanx. And then after he
Okay.
dispersed all of the crests, you basically go around to get all of them, kill anything in your way, and then take out Phalanx. Like you
Okay.
are not the hero. You are a
Yeah, so
demon.
I tried playing it off the Switch store. And I didn't quite have the manual, so I didn't know all the lore you were telling me um,
Mhm.
on Mondays. Because I was curious about it. It's like, okay, I missed a lot of what happened during Super NES. So I might as well try it on the Nintendo Switch. Which I'm gonna say this is on the Nintendo Switch Retro Games shop online. So that's how you can get it today.
Mhm. Yeah. It has So like the biggest thing about it, because I love exploration in games. I just like investigating worlds and whatnot. Demon's Crest does so Demon's Crest has linear level design, obviously, but it has
Right,
branching pathways. So the first level is pretty straightforward from A to B, but there are secrets in that, even in that first level. The
right,
second level and many onward have alternate paths that take you through entirely different areas, leading to completely different boss fights. So you can sequence break everything in this game pretty much in a, or maybe not to the same level as like Super Metroid, where you can get like you can use the wall jump to get like the super missile before you get Kraid, but you
right.
can get I would actually say you could probably get even further, because there's the Crest of Air, which allows you to basically fly, like control your movement while flying, whereas
Like up or
Firebrand
down,
could basically just hover. Yeah,
because
yeah,
normally
basically.
you're just, yeah, you're hovering right or left based on
Yeah,
whatever you did the double jump at.
exactly. So Firebrand can just basically kind of like hover, which is a fine balance, because if you could fly super early, you'd break the game. Uh,
Yeah,
he you can go all the way to that point of the game where you can get the Crest of Air, which is funny because you could just fly around the world anyway. 'Cause you can,
right. When I finished the first one, I was not sure where to go because I could just, you fly to whatever destination you choose. So I tried the cemetery and I got wrecked.
yeah. That's one of the other cool things I appreciate is difficulty. I like difficulty in games. Dark Souls, old school games. I beat Ninja Gaiden as a kid.
Oh, the NES ones?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Um,
That's good.
so I'm all about difficulty, and this game, the first 2 or 3 hours, like the first game session that I put into it, because I never played this until way later on like the Wii store, because I never had it.
Ah,
And then
yeah.
I also went to the graveyard, and the dude with the scythe just wrecked me, and I didn't understand what to do with the fight. And then obviously later throughout the game, I figured everything out, because I still have an old Game Informer manual with like everything about the game.
Oh my.
So I was always infatuated as a kid, but I never got to play it. And the difficulty like helped solidify. I was like, I like this game.
Oh wow.
And then of course the art style is it's just fantastic. I obviously have an affinity for pixel art, in case nobody noticed. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I hold the art style of this game in a much higher regard than most games. Like I would put it up there with something like Super Metroid and Chrono Trigger. It
Yeah,
just looks so good.
it reminds me a lot of how you see things in Metroid. Upper 16-bit graphics.
Hmm.
Before
Yeah. Good.
before they went to 32, at least on the Sega, they had the 32 bit upgrade, Sega 32X.
Hmm.
But not many people probably know about Sega nowadays. So yeah, it was pretty interesting from when I tried playing it using the Switch store, which I have the link right here on the slide, by the way. It's
Hmm.
Nintendo Switch online classic games. So next one is my one. It's Metal Gear Solid. It's when Metal Gear games became three-dimensional, started becoming three-dimensional. Um, Late 1998. Uh, it's the third canonical game because there's also Snake Revenge, but Hideo Kojima has decided that Snake's Revenge, which is the third one, is not canon, but Metal Gear 1 and 2 are.
Hmm.
And I'm just showing here, what they got the idea for Metal Gear Solid from, how they made Snake look like Kyle Reese, if you see in the lower right
Yeah, I
left
never
corner.
realized that. That's interesting.
Yeah, they got in trouble with with James Cameron briefly because it looks so much like Kyle Reese in
Yeah,
the
of course
cover of the
Cameron
game.
would. All right. All right.
And
And
I also
Escape from New York?
recommend, yeah, I recommend that movie for whoever has not watched it. It's Kurt Russell, Ernest Borgnine, and a few others. Oh, it also has Adrian Barbeau when she was young and kind of new to movies. She's also voiced Catwoman in the animated Batman television series as well. So that was an earlier film of hers. But yeah, it's a Kurt Russell movie. And what's interesting is the first person they asked to do the actual audio voice of Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid was Kurt Russell, who played Snake Plissken in Escape from New York. But Kurt Russell has, and I'll have the link to the interview from GQ magazine, but it's on YouTube. But Kurt Russell just said he didn't want to do something that was a remake or derivative of the movies he was in. So he said no when it came to being the actual voice. They had David Hayter, and David Hayter's worked pretty well in the voice role of Solid Snake. He's become pretty iconic. So yeah, unlike the previous, I mean, it does mostly top-down graphics in Metal Gear Solid, but you can change to first person for various objects. So you can see beyond what you'd see in top-down mode by just using your binoculars or your infrared goggles to see ahead, which helps in a lot of cases where there's traps or where there's enemies lurking off what's viewable from the top-down view. So that's part of why it's considered actual 3D. Not to mention there are rooms where you can have multiple floors and people walking on multiple floors at the same time. So it's not the first Metal Gear game. It's the first time it became a 3D Metal Gear game. Ed?
Yeah, because the original was on NES, right?
It's on NES, but you got ripped off on NES. You don't know why?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, it's what's considered the true version was the MSX or Famicom floppy disk, because those are where you actually fight the battle mech called Metal Gear, the big walking spider thing, which is why they call it Metal Gear. But in the NES version, you get ripped off because you fight a huge computer console with lasers, which is lame compared to the actual battle mech, which is they got the name of the games for. So
interesting.
Yeah. So it's available on Steam. It's available on GOG.com. It's available on every major console, Xbox, PlayStation, or Switch, for the Metal Gear Remastered. They had a remake in 2004 on the Nintendo GameCube called The Twin Snakes. I still recommend playing the Metal Gear Solid in the Remastered collection, the one that would be the PlayStation version first, though, because it's a bit different when you're playing Twin Snakes as a remake compared to the original. So Twin Snakes has things the original doesn't, such as you can have a trank dart gun. You can open up secret items in lockers that you couldn't in the previous game. And the other one is that you can scope kill cameras and various objects with the pistol, which you couldn't in the first. So that could kind of take some difficulty out of it, but it's slightly changed, obviously, as a remake for the Nintendo GameCube.
So the remake for the first one is on the same sort of level as the elevation from the original Resident Evil to the remake.
Somewhat, yes. Graphically not so much, but you're talking, with things don't look so blocky like in the original PlayStation game. They're a lot more smooth, obviously, because of higher polygon counts, and you can actually see people moving their lips in the
nice
remake when they talk. The other thing that Metal Gear Solid was famous for is both the remake and the original Metal Gear Solid are the games that started where they show cinematics in the same engine as the actual gameplay. A lot of the time they've just used live action footage or stock footage in games before that, and it's a pioneer in terms of stealth games. So
how is the stealth in the game?
It's pretty good. Your difficulty level affects how easily you can get spotted. The funny thing is that in real life, military training exercises. So in Metal Gear Solid, you can hide underneath a cardboard box. And in real life, the actual Marines, for a training exercise, they outsmarted actual military surveillance drone operators by hiding under cardboard boxes, so that
Really?
the surveillance drone operators didn't realize, oh, it's just a box. Well, no, it actually is. It's actually Marines in training who hid underneath cardboard boxes. So yeah,
That's hilarious. What an obscure detail to add.
right. But it was in Metal Gear Solid before they did the exercises, so it's a case of fact becoming stranger than
Oh,
fiction.
okay. That's even funnier.
So yeah, what was that? So sorry, it's on Steam. And the other thing that's is that yeah, I mean, I didn't start out by actually playing Metal Gear Solid. I played Splinter Cell first, which is somewhat similar, but it's less of a big map and more of just individual maps for certain areas in the Splinter Cell games. But it's a similar idea that you want to be sneaky because if they spot you, they can overwhelm you with numbers if you set off an
Hmm.
alarm. So it's the same idea. I later went looking for PS1 games that I may have missed, and I found Metal Gear Solid was one of the ones they recommended. So I wanted to see where it isn't technically where it started, but it is a good jumping on point for the Metal Gear series
Hmm.
because you get told what you need to know, and that's how it works. You get told enough of what you need to know when you play the game.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, my buddy loves the Metal Gear series.
yeah.
I just never got into it, is all.
I mean, it's all right. I mean, I got into it from other games, and I just wanted something that would be a little bit tricky and engaging, and so far it was. Uh, but yeah, I earlier did recorded video footage, but I've eventually figured that after doing Legend of Zelda in July, which I'm almost done with Link to the Past. Finally, I've got like Ganon Battle. I'll go to playing Metal Gear Solid live again.
Gotcha. I haven't kept up with things because I've been busy. Or did you get through the Tower of Hera or
Tower of Ganon, yes.
Ganon's Tower? Yeah.
I was so close to dead after beating him in Aghanim form that I went back. So I'm going to be doing the last bit, which people can catch while it's live or after it's live today. Because I was just so spent that I just didn't feel I could survive whatever the final battle with Ganon is. So,
Did you temper the Master Sword like I suggested?
oh yeah, I did
Okay.
that, and I got
Did you
silver
get the
arrows.
fourth sword?
Yes, it's on level 4.
Oh, you did get the yellow sword. Nice.
Yes, golden sword. Yeah, I finally did. Well, and I
Yeah,
know we say
you
more. We're
can
going to continue with your next recommendations coming up.
okay.
Yeah. So Perfect Dark.
I could be here all day talking about this game.
Well, I'll remind you. We won't go too long on a tangent on
I
this
know,
one.
I know, I
Okay.
know, I know. Um, so at the peak of the 64 era, you had, or rather, just as the transition was ending from the 64 into the GameCube, uh, Rare, which was at the time probably like the best game developers out there, maybe shy of like maybe someone like Blizzard because of StarCraft. Perfect Dark came out, and it was a spiritual successor to GoldenEye. And
Right.
this game blows GoldenEye out of the water. I know everybody's all like, "Oh, GoldenEye was so much." No, Perfect Dark is infinitely better. It takes place in the future, which actually is right about this time, I think. Um, and you follow Joanna Dark. She is a badass top tier special agent for the Carrington Institute, and you go up against Datadyne, which is a corrupt weapons manufacturer. The stealth in this game is top notch, and I don't know if I have personally encountered a stealth system anywhere near as all encompassing because of all the details in this game. The silencers obviously do the cartoony, total silence of a weapon, but you can also use like just as an extra detail, like you could shoot out all the lights in the buildings and basically just render it impossible to see and enemies can't see you or find you.
Which is a good
Um,
follow-up from what I mentioned with Metal Gear Solid, 'cause it's similar, you know, you can turn out lights, or you can use EMP devices in, MGS.
and this game has a great deal of equipment. So a lot of a lot of people have looked at games. I don't know specifically if Borderlands has a secondary feature in weapons, but I know that secondary feature has been around for a long time. Perfect Dark is basically the game that took that concept to its absolute maximum. You have, I think it's something like 100 no, it's like 75 or so individual weapons, and every weapon has
Wow.
a secondary fire.
Wow. That's crazy.
Are you looking up the weapons list?
Yeah, I am. I'll
Yeah.
stop being distracted.
No, you're good. You're good, buddy. So, like all of there are so many different weapons and so many different tools that you have access to in the game. Um, Everything from the Falcon 2, which is the basic pistol that Joanna is
Right,
wielding right there.
similar to the PP7 and, GoldenEye, basically.
Yeah, basically. But instead of just shooting, you can also pistol whip. So there's a lethal and non-lethal option, all
Ah,
the way up to something like the laptop gun or the Farsight XR20. But like the laptop gun is it's just an automatic rifle, and its secondary fire is you fold it up into a sentry gun, toss it on the wall, and it automatically guns things down.
wow, it sounds a lot like BioShock 2, where there's I can't remember what it was in BioShock 2, but it's a similar idea. You can, like, throw mini turrets and they stick on walls. But
Hmm. Yeah, there's all kinds of detail. Um, and of course, every level, as was the case with many 64 games like Mario or anything else, the environments are basically wide open to travel in. There are multiple paths and multiple options to achieve your goals in many cases. Um, there are specific requirements for certain things. If you were to go to, like for example, there's a mission in where you have to break open a wall and you have a crate that
right,
explodes. You can destroy the crate early and it says objective failed, abandon the mission, you lose. But it's not true because you can use the Dragon, another assault rifle, automatic rifle, and its secondary fire is a proximity mine. So you can throw the gun down and shoot the gun, and it explodes and breaks open the wall.
or
Which,
take like the traditional three options for approaching. You can take the stairs, take the ladder, or just jump off the building. All three get to the same location.
yeah, basically. So you have a ton of natural exploration. You have cheat codes in the game or you have cheats in the game for if you beat certain missions under a time frame. So players are challenged to speed run the game within it, and the achievement is a cheat, which are hilarious. Everything from DK mode, which like triples
Big
the
head.
size of everybody's arms and heads, or
Yeah,
you can
so
you can
that's a refinement from what they did in, GoldenEye, pretty much. You
yeah,
earn
basically,
by
basically. So
being within a time limit.
yeah, so everything like a lot of the things that GoldenEye has, Perfect Dark basically cranks to 11. Um, it's so in depth, it's so well detailed, and despite its age, it's still I still argue to this day that it is probably the best game on the 64. Um, Although it does have like one major issue outside of the controls, because the 64 was
Oh,
designed
yeah.
by, a stoner. Um, the
Yeah,
biggest issue with the 60 with Perfect Dark is that not only did it require the expansion pack like Donkey Kong 64, there is so much going on in Perfect Dark that uh the game physically cannot be played properly on the 64. There's so much going on. There are so many individual objects and things to interact with that you need almost double the memory to play the game smoothly. So when you play the game, you're not even getting 30 FPS. Even if you crank it down like to lowest res and
right.
normal instead of a widescreen format, you're still running like 10 or 15 at times.
Oh yeah. I mean,
It's rough.
I was thinking since I finally have the Switch Store, I was going to try the Switch Store version because chances are, since that's more advanced hardware on the Switch Store, on the Switch in general, that it would probably be able to handle that pretty well, pretty easily.
Yeah, I haven't played it on that. I would assume it's going to handle decently well, if not entirely well. But there is a way to play it on PC, and it plays at like a million frames per second, and it's PC controls. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would anticipate and I would expect because the let's just say it this way: the Switch controller or the Xbox controller, the dual joystick, that was meant for first person gameplay. It's
Yes.
the best thing we could have besides a mouse and keyboard. In part because the Halo started the Xbox as the in terms of Xbox games, and they really dedicated to the first person. I mean, this N64, I'm fine with you playing, Mario or a third person game with it, but the first person ones, except for maybe GoldenEye, are just a pain trying to control them.
Hmm. Yeah, they're Perfect Dark also changed a few things up, and there's like 8 different control schemes pre-programmed into the game,
Oh yeah.
and one of them was actually using two 64 controllers to allow for the dual shock, which is probably it may I don't know for sure, but may have been where the control scheme came from for future titles. So you'd have one, so because you had the triggers on both sides, so
Right.
you had access to hitting A and B with the right hand a lot more
Oh yeah.
efficiently than the left. So left controlled Joanna's movement, right controlled the aiming. So her torso and whatnot. And then you had the two Z triggers, and you had access to A and B.
Right.
So it's a wild control scheme that I never got good with, but it was an option. They put in so much work.
Wow. Yeah, it's one of those that were made a little bit ahead of time, but it was coming to the close.
Yep. And if it wasn't for the control scheme, honestly, I would place it. Well, I do still personally place this higher than Halo Combat Evolved, but if it wasn't for the control scheme, I think most people would probably and the poor performance, I think most people would agree that Perfect Dark is better than Halo 1.
Yeah. Um, and we're going to be going into more of these games that came out at somewhat of the wrong time or the time of transition between consoles. Yeah, I'll trust you on that one, Chaos. I I've always preferred either a PS3, PS4 control for first person or an Xbox, and I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
agree.
Chaos is absolutely correct here. The graphics were updated to proper 1920 by 1080 resolution, as well as the models themselves were updated quite a bit. So Joanna doesn't look like a pickle getting crushed in a vice. Now she looks like the character you see there on the slide, the top slide.
Right.
Um, and it runs smoothly, and of course, it has the dual analog control scheme. So if you don't have access to the or want to play the version that can be downloaded online through Grazlu on YouTube, he
Ah, Grassley, yes.
yeah, Grazlu00 went through and he helped code a mod that puts the original 64 on PC and actually has all of the control options and everything for mouse
I
and keyboard.
actually did
So it's
play
all
his
there.
his modded version of GoldenEye, that's multiplayer on Steam. So I recognize Graslow actually.
Yeah, he has the complete version of Perfect Dark with everything that you could need. And like I said, it plays at like 300 frames or whatever. It's
Right.
insane. So if you ever want to play like the true best version of the game, there you go.
Yeah. And to conclude this, it is available on both Nintendo Switch and Xbox Live stores, and there is a remake coming at a date to be announced. The announcements for it are on Steam, that they're going to do a PC version of it that's a remake of the original Perfect Dark.
Yeah, I'm worried.
I
I'm
am,
worried.
but at least I have the original in the Nintendo Switch store, so
Hmm.
that's what I've got for now. But our next one is going to go a little bit up and above and beyond into other worlds. Star Control 2. So this is this game is really old, but um, the way that it plays is pretty much timeless in a way. It was originally it was on DOS in 1992 as a CD-ROM game, and it was also released in 1994 for the 3DO console that nobody knows about. It's a Star Trek game without being called Star Trek, and it involves exploring around the galaxy and other stars, making contact with other alien races, making allies, collecting resources, and building up your fleet and upgrading your main mothership. So in the cover art here, you see the white is the mothership, and the smaller ships are the various little allied ships you have from the
Hmm.
other races you can get in the game. Um, you can play it as single player or on PC or 3DO. You can play as a two-player game where you just have fight each other as different ships, and it's top-down 2D view for the ship space combat, but the exploration part is still pretty good. I didn't exactly get this game when it came out.
Hmm.
Um, a friend of mine had an old 3DO, and we played some of his 3DO games on that 3DO console, including Star Control. But I got the freeware version called the Urquan Masters, and I have a link to that in the description. And that's how I got introduced to Star Control 2. I later tried Star Control 1, but Star Control was where they really had the engine refined and really had the gameplay set up for how they were going to do it. Uh, and they really had something that looked somewhat you could somewhat understand. You had actual animated characters in cinematics rather than still frames with text. I mean, you can't blame them because they made the first one was released in 1990, and it was a
Hmm.
floppy disk game, but pushing the limits of what you could put on a floppy disk. But this one was a CD-ROM game, obviously, so um, it obviously had more data. They could obviously fit more into it, such as actual audio voices and animated dialogue screens, all there.
Yeah, old school AMVs.
Yes, there's a joke too in this game when you're visiting the human sp- uh, orbital space station near Earth in the beginning of the game. It's a joke that it's like they're having a disco in there because of all the flashing lights with uh,
Nice.
with Commander Keys. So, or Commander Hayes, he's one of the first characters you meet in the game, NPCs you meet in the game, and he's the guy who you go to order up ships for your fleet to be built. And you sell minerals, you sell mined materials that you get from various planets you explore to get upgrades. Then you also have the weird one with the where you collect, you hunt life forms and collect their DNA, so you can sell them to another alien species and get new technologies. Don't ask
Wow.
what they want to do with you being interstellar big game hunter, but who knows?
Reminds me of that episode where in Justice League where Superman gets pulled into that collector's uh uh like library of living creatures. He's like, "Oh, the last
Oh,
Kryptonian.
that
Sweet."
was that was that was Superman the animated series actually.
Oh, was it?
I
Okay.
was watching it on Amazon. Yeah, it's also where you get to meet Lobo for the first time. And Lobo was
Mm,
sending Superman to the Collector, and then Lobo finds out the Collector wanted to collect him too because he's also the last one.
yeah, they have to work together. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a funny episode, and that's basically what you're doing is, but you're going along, and we have some spare time, so I think I could go and try and get footage here. Let me see if I can send share screen. I'm gonna get footage. Look up footage for Demon's Crest, and we'll have some fun with that. That should be
By all
fun.
means, really underrated game. It's one of those underrated titles. Like, well, I suppose we could talk about it another time, but Illusion of Gaia as well.
So let me see. Okay. So share screen. Let's see. Present. Share screen.
And you did complete the Castlevania thing, right? It's going up in one piece.
Yep.
Like
It's
one
coming
big
out
video.
tomorrow. It's
Okay,
premiering
cool.
at noon tomorrow. So.
And the music is so good too.
Capcom. You gotta love
I love
Capcom.
this. Yeah, this was like peak Capcom before they went nuts. Not getting any audio.
Oh, I turned it down a little bit so it wouldn't overwhelm our voices.
Oh, I gotcha. Well, that's okay. The graphics should be more than enough.
It's pretty good for that time where it's before PlayStation and N64.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is the part I didn't go too far beyond it, where I have to break out of that prison thing.
Yeah. So the Demon's Crest actually has an opening intro if you just sit at the beginning long enough, and this is I believe this demon. I think the dragon's name is Samolu, I believe, and Firebrand actually just got done fighting him to get one of the crests. The problem is after he beat the dragon, Phalanx knocked Firebrand out, and so you have to fight the dragon in a weakened state, and you don't have any of your crests or anything of the nature. So you're just like, well, crap.
Yeah,
And the
I
game's
didn't have
just
the
like, yep, you're
manual.
gonna learn how to play, and you're gonna learn how to play right now.
Yeah, so I didn't have the manual, so I didn't know what was going on. Other than that's how I start.
Yeah. Yeah, the opening sequence, if you just sit and chill on the opening title there, like after, it says Demon's Crest and all that, if you just sit there for a few minutes, or not a few minutes, I'm sorry, it's like 10, 15 seconds, something like that, it'll go into playing the original, or it'll go into playing the opening sequence, which explains the backstory for why the demons went nuts, went through a civil war, and like everything that happened in the game. It's just like a lot of older games from that era where you just have to chill. It's like
Right.
I don't know if you did that with A Link to the
Right. You
Past.
got to read the manual.
Yeah, you could do that too. I miss manuals.
I had to find the PDF on that one. Yeah.
I miss manuals. They were so fun.
They are.
Hey,
So in a
Shadow,
little
how
bit,
you
I'll
doing?
try do it. What do you? Hey, how you doing, Shadow? So after this, I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna try getting up over to another one we did. So I'll try. How about I try Star Control, and I'll skip through the intro. I mean, it's a long intro. Here,
Sure.
yeah, I'll skip the intro because it's really long. So yeah, so this is a long intro of how it all started. But yeah, this is a dialogue screen right here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that frog in the corner supposed to be sign languaging for us?
Yeah, he's doing it for the Urquan. So he's a telepathic type of toad that translates for the various aliens that he is a translator for, especially the Urquan, which is what you see right there. That's an Urquan. 3 eyes,
Oh,
tentacles.
that's hilarious. I was making that as a joke, but that's that's really funny.
And this is when you land on a planet, try to get resources. So you have the orbital screen. So at the
Oh
beginning of the
wow.
game, it's like a tutorial. You do your first mining, so you have to get uranium off of Mercury. So and initially you
And
don't you take damage in Star Control 2 as in the form of how much your crew are alive. It's kind of
uh,
weird. It's like normally you think like are the engines still running and so on, but it's a it's a simplistic way of doing damage. So I often would just spam it and get all these crew compartments and just get like 500 crew. So it would take so much to destroy my ship.
nice. So you're traveling between different planets, and it reminds me of No Man's Sky.
Yeah, No Man's Sky or Galaxy on Fire, all of them were inspired by this essentially. And
Gotcha.
I'm skip to ship combat right here. So in this case, he's not using the main. Oh well, that's a cruiser. It's a fellow. It's part of your fleet, but I just use the mothership because I've got more powerful weapons with that when it comes to destroying Ilrath.
Okay.
They're basically think of them as aliens that look like vultures, and they've got a cloaking device. So I'm beginning to think they got the idea from Star Trek Romulans to get those.
Yeah, I noticed the very Romulan design, almost all or Klingon, I should say.
Right.
Looks like the bird of prey.
Yeah. But yeah, that's combat. So that's Star Control 2. How about we do Perfect Dark next, and then we'll do Metal Gear Solid.
Hmm.
Uh,
Miss game manuals, music, DVD booklets. They were so fun, especially the ones with commentary on the content of the media. Yes, absolutely. Game manuals were fantastic. I miss that we've walked away from them.
so this is Perfect Dark here.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is
I
the
think yeah. So
N64.
this should be the first mission.
So
Yeah,
you're going down a building, I guess.
yeah. So the first mission, you start at the top of the Datadyne building, and then you have to try to fight your way all the way to the basement floor where there's a lab underneath the facility, and it's a ton of fun exploration combat. You could shoot through a lot of glass. There's glass that is also there's a lot of glass that
Bulletproof.
is bulletproof. Um, because this takes place in the future, you have shields, not just body armor. That's why you see
Right.
this aura
Body
around her.
got it.
Um, and one of the cool things they did in this game is like you'll notice a lot of these guys have like really long animations for things. It's because like to compensate for the game having such excess detail. Like the guy right there is like, "Oh no, my gun jammed." Uh, because of how
Right.
long the animations take to reload, or uh, how buggy the game, or not buggy, but bogged down the game can be. Enemies had extra animations put in to compensate, to allow for the player to react, which actually made the game feel a hell of a lot more realistic. If you shoot
Right.
somebody in the foot, they're gonna hobble around on their foot. If
Right.
you
I mean,
shoot somebody in the arm, they're gonna hold their arm.
right. I don't have anything against Quake. I mean, Quake was where they started making actual 3D first-person shooters, but I mean, the advances that we got in GoldenEye or Perfect Dark, where they actually could start, feeling pain, depending on how you like shot him in the leg or something.
Yep.
That made it a little bit more interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can you can let your inner psychopath come out in this game, because you could pop dudes in the knee, the foot, the arm. You could pop them in the crotch, and they all react to it.
Right. So I'm gonna try a little bit of Metal Gear Solid as our fourth little demo footage here.
Sure.
Ah, actually, I could even use my my footage that I got for it.
Oh, that's okay, Juan. I appreciate that you came. Like it's just
Hey,
because
you're
you're
never
late, no
late.
big deal, buddy.
Let me try and get it here.
Yes, it is one. They're remaking Perfect Dark because it's been in hiatus since Perfect Dark 0 on the 360. And yeah, they gave Joanna the Crimson Chin, which is one of the biggest problems I have because I guarantee it's going to be a DEI, hellhole.
Yeah. And the one thing I just see, it feels like there's a lot of span for a lot of their adaptations because it seems like they don't want to do any stoic characters, and it makes it kind of monotonous. So yeah,
Mhm.
this is the beginning of the PlayStation Metal Gear Solid. But
This is like an opening straight out of Perfect Dark. There's
it's
a mission where
okay.
you
I mean, the
sneak
remake
in.
has more animation, like actual people talking.
Sure. There's a
But
charm to
yeah,
these kinds of graphics.
there is. I mean, it was pushing it.
Mhm.
So yeah, this is the main villain here, but I'm gonna try and skip ahead to the part where it becomes more along the 3D element here. The element, yes, there are somewhat long cutscenes in this one. Like here, like the title scene right here, Metal Gear Solid, pre-credits. Uh, okay. So here's the comlink animations where they actually do show their lips moving, but it's only in these ones that they do that.
Yeah,
And
seen this memed numerous times.
yeah, so here, so this is where you're looking through binoculars. This one is part of the game. It's preset, but you can otherwise use the binoculars as an item in any part of the game to see beyond what you can see in top down. You can see up, you can see down, you can see upper floors. It's great.
Nice. Oh, is this like a Shadow Island or whatever it's called?
Shadow
Because
Moses Island. That's
yeah,
where Metal Gear Solid is. Is
yeah.
maybe
This was
because
a
they,
mission in this was a map in Smash Bros.
yeah, that's what I noticed. I noticed that Snake is a character in Super Smash Brothers.
Hmm.
But I'm going to show the last little bit of how the 3D works here by going inside the actual.
It looks like it plays sort of like Pac-Man.
It does. I mean, it's like I said, it's top down view. But when you use your actual binoculars and other items, things are going on. So, for instance, there are people on the upper floors, which if I'm running underneath on the floor underneath them, they can hear me and they can be alerted. And right here, I'm trying to avoid getting spotted in the light. Oh, that was close.
Hmm.
I'm gonna go skip to head to the hangar. This is where I'm going through the vent, which you can do in this game too.
Oh wow, air vents that are not pristine clean.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just trying to find the actual entrance to get out of there. But in this game, you really have to listen carefully because you can hear the footsteps.
Oh, cool.
So I'm trying to hop. They obviously just show cones for where the enemy is looking,
Uh-huh.
and I could put my back to the wall and see around a little bit more.
Nice. I can really tell how inspired those communications are between Snake and his CO that inspired Resident Evil 4's comms.
Right, and that was part of why I recommended Escape from New York as a movie. But I know I'd like to be a little longer, but we'll have another episode.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So now we're back. So we're gonna go to our last little bit. Next one, we're having a second episode of our recommended games. It should be fun. We'll have 4 more games like we had in this one. And it should be pretty good. Albeleo, you've got our Fallout stream coming up, and I'm going to do the last battle with Ganon after I've gotten myself plenty of health and medicine to survive that one.
Yeah, make sure you've got plenty of red pots.
Yeah. So in the meantime, hope you all have a wonderful evening. We'll see you again next Thursday. And sayonara.
Have a good day, everybody.